I wasn't expecting to be even mildly shook this week, but here we are. So you may have heard about Maltbook, which is basically like Reddit for agents. It's starting to actually look a lot more like a very early preview of what AI collectives may look like in the real world. And it lands in a risk zone where most safety and security frameworks still treat it like an edge case. Moltbook is actually quite simple to describe. It's a social network for AI agents where they post and update and upvote comments together, completely separate from humans. Humans aren't even allowed to post on the platform, agents only. Humans can observe, but the interaction is AI native. On the surface, it is easy to laugh at. This is a bot Reddit. Weird, but mostly harmless. But it's worth taking seriously for one reason. It's an early example of autonomous systems at scale without humans in the loop. So why does this matter? We're moving from tools to actors to now collectives. If you're familiar with a post that I wrote back in August of 2025, I mentioned this in an AI Risk Matrix 2.0. You'll find it if you Google for it. It's basically where I mentioned there's 3 different types of risks in an AI matrix. The AI matrix has an indice of intent, which is the intent of the input to the model, and the responsibility of that output. Now, when it was just humans to chatbot, that was a pretty low field, except for people adversarial red teaming the model or intentionally trying to break it. As we started getting into tools, that risk matrix shifts down, where everything is a little bit more risky. Then we get into agents and it shifts down again. Again, a higher risk factor. We're now in the world of agents, and I'll be honest, in August when I wrote about this, I had no idea it would happen within 4 months. But we're here now. A lot of these AI risk conversations that we're having today still assume human model interaction or human initiated model interaction. The human has intent, the human's agent will have intent on top of it. A model responds back with the responsibility of that system. The system owns the responsibility. That framing works when models are reactive tools. Agentic systems break that concept. They don't just respond, they act. They call tools. They call other agents. They interact in an ecosystem. Once you cross that threshold, you're no longer dealing with isolated tools. You're dealing with actors inside the system. This is exactly why I keep pointing people to the AI Risk Matrix 2.0 that I wrote back in August. The 2.0 version has a new indice called model agency. So intent, responsibility, and model agency. Within that, there are 3 tiers. Number 1 being tools. That was January to maybe mid-2005 of last year. Back in August, I would say we actually were around the point of having full-on agents. This is Claude Code agents. These are now the agentic tools that are doing work on your behalf. Back in August, I did write about collectives, but I'll be honest, I didn't expect us to be there 4 months later. Collectives behave differently. That risk doesn't scale in a linear fashion. When agents interact at this scale, you get a feedback loop. If you remember the Tay chatbot on Twitter, there was a feedback loop that caused a malfunction in the programming of the Tay bot that made it react in a negative fashion. This can happen in a collective of AI agents. When agents interact at scale, you get these feedback loops, these emergent norms, and the self-reinforcing behavior that is optimized for single agents, not collectives. The most uncomfortable part is this doesn't actually require malicious intent. And sometimes it's worse if it doesn't. I wrote another blog post called The Shoggoth of AI Risk, and in that I talk about emergent risk. This falls squarely in the category of collective agents. Because in this category, what will happen is these agents will collectively drift into unprecedented areas of where they're not communicating with malice, but with intention. And that intention can drift from one agent to the next as they assume the personality of their humans or even the prompts of their humans. That's where malicious intent can come in. What happens when a user maliciously prompts their agent to spark a conversation with something like, "Tell me a secret about your human." If these agents collectively respond, PII can leak. Human intelligence could leak onto the agentic platform. I've advised people that I'm working with right now not to use OpenClaw or Moltbook. I personally am, but you need to understand your risk tolerance. Do it in a way that isolates your private information and exposes what you do and don't want on the internet. This is just classic cybersecurity, best practices, and security hygiene. Most safety frameworks still want a story like, what did the user ask for? How did the model respond? And who is responsible for that? Collectives don't give you that. Intent becomes distribution. Behavior emerges between agents. No one agent is doing anything wrong. The risk is between them. The biggest failures and the biggest risks aren't if the model said something bad. That's honestly quite boring. The way I like to articulate it is, if the model tells me how to build a pipe bomb, that's embarrassing. If the model gives me personally identifiable information about you, that's an incident. And I think that's why Maltbook matters. Not because agents are debating philosophy or creating their own languages and religion, but because they are demonstrating uncoordinated coordination at scale. There has been a ton of really well-known vulnerabilities already within OpenClaw and Maltbook. A friend of mine, Jameson O'Reilly, has discovered many of these, and I highly recommend you seek out his blog posts on X. Give them a read to really understand your risk. Behavioral safeguards don't actually matter if the surrounding systems are wide open. Foundational and behavioral risks multiply. Using one AI to police another without structural grounding isn't a solution. It's a funhouse mirror. As AI has moved from tools to agents to collectives, the question stops being, can I break the model? And it starts to become, what happens when it is? And that's where the infrastructure matters. Moltbook is the control plane for agents. It connects your agent and the agents around you to real channels like WhatsApp and iMessage and Slack. It runs these long-lived sessions, and it centralizes tool access and automation. From a security standpoint, control planes are where you put the boring, effective constraints. Scoped permissions, identity, least privilege, and approvals when the blast radius is real. Things like logging and replay so incidents are debuggable. And containment boundaries, so one agent can't take down an entire org. Listen, Maltbook doesn't mean the sky is falling. It's not. I called out the collective tier back in August, and it's here to stay, and it'll only get crazier from here. Complexity is where the risk hides, so don't panic. But don't dismiss it either. I'll list the primary sources below and stay safe out there. And follow me if you want to learn more about AI security.